Good afternoon, everybody. I am Andrew Cappetta, Manager of Collection and Exhibition Programs at the Cleveland Museum of Art, and I'd like to welcome you to today's desktop dialogue. Use this time to familiarize yourself with the chat interface, which is just on the right-hand side of your screen where you're seeing me. To join the chat, just enter your name, or really any name that you prefer, and click to agree to the terms of service and the privacy policy. You can use this chat to make comments or ask questions during the program at any time. Below the screen, there should be a list of web resources that relate to this afternoon's program, so feel free to take a look at those now or later. And lastly, the program is being recorded, so you can watch it later on the CMA website or our YouTube channel. If you want to watch it again, share with a friend, or maybe you have to duck out to do something, you can pick up where you left off there. So for this afternoon's program, Comfort with the Unknown, we will explore how close and mindful looking at a single work of art. In this case, we're going to be focusing on the Statuette of a woman, which is popularly known as the Stargazer. How close and mindful looking of this object can help us find comfort with the uncertain aspects of our lives today. I'm sure that many of us feel we are on shaky ground, whether it's because of the unpredictability of the pandemic, the uneasy transition of the presidency that we're seeing unfold right now, or the beginning of a new year where so much unknown and also so much possibility lies ahead. So close looking will allow us to slow down our viewing and our assessment of an art object, know details about it, and become more conscious of the inferences we make about what we see. And once one becomes aware of one's own snap judgments, new interpretations come to the fore. This self-awareness can also be more meditative and help us be more mindful. And I'm sure any of you that have attended our programs in the fall, Close Looking in the Distance with my colleague Kijo Lee, have experienced that. So joining us today for this close looking exploration in this journey is Gwendolyn Wren, who's a mindfulness and contemplation guide. Welcome, Gwen. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It is so special to be here in conversation. And as we get our program underway, I'd really like to begin with a land acknowledgement. I am joining you from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not very far from the Cleveland Museum of Art. And I'd like to take a moment to just honor this land, this actual ground beneath our feet, as well as acknowledge the traditional homelands, or this as the traditional homelands of the Lenape, the Shawnee, the Wyandotte, the Miami, the Ottawa, the Potawatomi, the Erie, and the Mississauga, as well as other Great Lakes tribes who I am committed to learning more about. I encourage everyone to take an opportunity to learn more about the history of the lands where you are and to support and amplify Indigenous organizations in your community. As far as our time together today goes, I really look forward to diving into this conversation around mindfulness and the Stargazer, which is absolutely one of my favorite pieces in the collection. So thank you very much for inviting me to join you.
It's great to have you. We look forward to your insights and also, some practice too. So for that reason, our structure is going to be a little bit different today. Gwen's going to demonstrate and lead some mindfulness techniques at the beginning and end of the program, some tools to really help us, I think, through these challenges that we face today and these so many unknowns that we face. And between these two practices, we're going to have a conversation together with your audience, during which we'll welcome your comments and questions. So I think, Gwen, you're going to start us off with a little check-in so we can all enter this kind of experience refreshed and with a new framework.
Yeah, between slow looking and mindfulness, I really love the similarities between life and art and how we can really approach them both. We can ultimately talk a lot about mindfulness and meditation and slowing down, but practices like these are really experiential. And the kicker to all of that is that each time we practice it, each time we experience it, it might feel and look completely different depending on where we're coming from and what's going on around us. So in the context of art, it might mean that we glean or extract something new that we've never seen before or can now see in a new way. And that's really true for life too, right? And one of the benefits of incorporating a mindfulness practice. So this mindfulness can really permeate everything that we do. Today, we're going to experience states of mindfulness and embodiment to help us explore the statuette and ourselves, not just through this process of slow looking, but through this entire pervasive act of slowing down. So I think that we should be able to bring the Stargazer onto the screen if it's not there already. And as we kind of shift ourselves into this mindfulness practice, just a moment to kind of experience the Stargazer as you might in the museum setting, as if you were to stumble upon it or seek it out within the gallery. And as you kind of take that in, since we can't be there in person, unfortunately, so as you take that in, um, I'd like to just invite a moment for you to also begin to make yourself a little bit more comfortable. So whatever that means to you, if you're able to shift or stretch, I want to really stress that you're allowed to be comfortable in meditation. And actually, in yogic philosophy and yogic practice, the physical asana is the physical movement portion is all done just to prepare the body to sit still for meditation. Today, what we're exploring doesn't need a certain posture in order to be helpful. There's no certain way you have to sit. So, this is really about accessibility within the mindfulness practice. So, give yourself some freedom to see what that means for you. And I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths just because as we begin to kind of shift into a mindfulness practice, it just takes like a different form of awareness, a different feeling and approach. So maybe we all take a few breaths. That you could just begin to kind of notice yourself here. We have this outer world and we have this inner world, and mindfulness practices are really helping us find a harmony, find that bridge between them so we can experience things in a really embodied way. So we can experience things with all of our senses and all of our attention. If your eyes are still open, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes or just to kind of shift your gaze down or out or away from the screen for a moment. When we talk about the outer world and we talk about the inner world, the breath really becomes the doorway between those, something that exists in both spaces. So a moment just to notice the air on the tips of the nostrils and the back of the throat and down into the lungs and back out again. That in this moment, there's nothing to hurry towards and nothing that you're missing. We take some 20,000 breaths a day, and this is just an opportunity to give all of our awareness to a few of them. And that's mindfulness in a nutshell, just the awareness of where we're placing our attention. And then the ability, the spaciousness that that can kind of open up within us to experience life, and in this case, art, differently or more fully. We'll take just another couple of breaths here, just you allowing yourself to experience whatever's coming up or evident for you in this moment. So, in a moment, you'll begin to flutter your eyes open and allow them to come to rest on the screen again. And just see what you notice. Hmm.
To the Stargazer. Um, oh,
I
I
think
shouldn't
we
be muted.
have
Okay, good. I'm on now. Great. That was odd. You can hear me now? Okay, good. So I would like everyone to hold off on not wanting to know more data to try to suspend that desire, which I think is built into the museum experience, which might even be built into the human experience, Gwen, um, right? And get in touch with your initial observations. So, audience, as we already have some coming in, so please put your observations in the chat again to sort of just where your eyes landed when you opened to the Stargazer. And while we're waiting for some to come in, Gwen, what about you? What was the first thing that you were drawn to? And we can even work with our colleague Sean to zoom in on some of those things.
Yeah. Um, I'm going to let my eyes kind of focus on it for a moment because it's interesting, like coming out of the space of inner reflection. There's like that moment, that bridge where we start to focus on outer reflection too.
Mhm.
I love the simplicity of the lines and the shape of the Stargazer. And I think that, especially against this Black background right now, it's just so striking how emotive that something can still be in such simplicity.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think it is aided by this particular image of it. But we have some wonderful comments. Cheryl, and maybe Sean, we could zoom out a little bit to get Cheryl's comment. I love how her body is shaped like a heart. I agree with you. That's
Mhm.
such a fascinating thing. I think when I've talked about this with you, Gwen, before, and I am really fascinated by that silhouette. Um, it's quite striking. Uh, Anna says its shoulders look so relaxed. I think that's quite interesting. I wonder if it's the contours of it. We have so many comments. This is great. The long neck, Joanne Havala notices. So maybe if we could zoom in on that sort of kind of neck and shoulders area, right? That's quite sort of noteworthy and beautiful and so striking. Um, Gwen, is there anything that you're noticing? We have lots more details, but is there anything that you're noticing about these sort of particular details that strike anything that strikes you?
Yeah, so I'm actually really enamored by some of these comments coming in and the reoccurrence of the word heart, and also like the idea that like her missing hands could be over her heart, and all of this
Mm,
really heart-centric connection that we feel,
mm,
as opposed to just being something that we see. And I think that that's something really
yeah,
beautiful that might come out of our own ability to check in with our heart and our nervous system and how we're feeling, and then can relate to an object outside of us, someone else outside of us, something else outside of us.
completely. There's a wonderful SJ says the facial posture is proud, and I love the way that sort of really comes from, I think, an embodied understanding of the length of that neck and that sort of maybe that position of that relaxation of the shoulders, which I think is quite lovely. Others are pointing out the surface, not only the milky white color, which is quite beautiful, but I've noticed that someone, I think someone in here is also pointing at Cheryl Weinstein, and if we can zoom in on the surface, is pointing out the dark blemishes that Cheryl's never noticed before. That sort of texture, right? Um,
Mm.
which is just from aging, and what happens when something like this is sort of within the ground for a long time.
Yeah.
Joanne Havala notices a tapered foot. It could be planted. Nicole saying the arms look like wings, and we see bird-like interpretations. I love how also people are sort of building upon one another's comments. Catherine notices, if we can go to the bottom portion, the etchings at the bottom of her torso and legs. So just to think about the delicacy of those details.
And the artistry, the person that held it and put those lines on it. And again, like the simplicity of how much can be conveyed through those very simple, very few lines that appear on her.
Completely. Larry says, I see the arms tucked in with a prideful, I think relaxed maybe position, just like it just did a good job kind of stance. Like,
Yeah.
Which I love that. I love, and actually we're going to do something in a little bit, not to sneak peek, but we're going to kind of do a little bit where we're going to embody the sculpture a little bit, which I think will be really great. Might be a good time to, these are amazing comments, please keep them coming. Stacy asked, what is she made of? And I think, Stacy, we're going to answer your question in a little bit. And it's not to say that that's not an important question, but I think this sort of kind of letting those wait a little bit is a kind of kind of part of, I think, what we're trying to maybe represent or demonstrate or lead here. So, Gwen, maybe it'd be good for me to ask you right now, why did you choose this object to look at and discuss right now at the start of the new year and also at such a challenging time?
Yeah, we've all just experienced a really, really tough year together. And it's been fraught with instability and uncertainty, and with the pandemic and the impeachment proceedings and the inauguration. It still is. And it's really brought this tension, this feeling of uncertainty to the forefront of our experience. But the truth is that everything's always uncertain, right? Like everything's always uncertain. Things are always changing. And it's just become undeniable right now. Not knowing what the future has in store for us is one of the only certainties of being human. So when I think about like what that feels like to be in that space of uncertainty and not knowing, and I want to be able to approach it with as much ease as possible. And that doesn't mean that it's easy, right? But like as much ease as possible. And this balance of holding vision for what the future can be without an attachment to the outcome. So all of that really distills down for me into maintaining a sense of hope and curiosity and wonder and action, of course. But that hope and that curiosity and that wonder, like that's what the statuette embodies to me. And you can actually feel it in the posture, and you hinted to this, like, and I saw so many really great comments about both the feeling of relaxation and almost that feeling of like strength or pride that it conveys. And so I think that's really cool that we should be, and we might do that together, is to all take a moment to kind of adapt the gesture of the stargazer. And this is actually something that I do with all different forms and types of artwork that I come across, because it's so powerful to embody that feeling as a tool for understanding and exploration. So let's all go ahead and study the image of the stargazer for a moment. And as you study it, there's just going to be this kind of like natural adaptation that might begin to happen in your body. So I'd like to bring some awareness to the chest and the shoulders and the collarbone. So allow the head just to be relaxed for a moment, and we'll just kind of take it one step at a time and just begin to broaden through the collarbone a little bit so the shoulders draw back and down. And then see if the arms can still be kind of soft, that nothing's rigid that doesn't have to be. And as we do so, see if, the neck can begin to get just a little bit longer. And just take a deep breath or two right here. And if you notice that you're clenching, or that there's gripping to like the hips or the pelvis, that you could just kind of like wiggle a little bit in your seat and really concentrate on this upper body. And then the length to the neck, and then draw the chin so that the chin elevates just a little bit, so that you could imagine like the gaze cast outwards. And as you lift the chin, pay attention to the back of the neck. So the place where the head and the neck meet, and make sure that you aren't crunching into it. So it might mean lowering the chin just a little bit. Once you've found this place, just take a moment to see kind of what this feels like to you, like what this posture conveys. And would you be looking at something close and in focus, or in some a stance like this, would your gaze be more open and onto something vast or unending? And after you take maybe just another breath here, if you're still in the posture, you can kind of shake it off and just kind of return to a conversational position. But for me, this posture of the stargazer evokes all of those things. It evokes feelings of devotion and resilience and wonder.
Mhm.
And that resilience really comes up strong, that we all need that little bit of resilience, or a lot of resilience, to move forward with everything that's on our plate right now and everything that's being asked of us to step up to. And this little piece, this little stargazer, has lasted millennia. You know, talk about resilience. So, so when I look at it and I embody this type of energy, it's not just what I see with my eyes when I look at her, but what I feel in my chest, and that kind of boldness of looking out into the vast unknown and standing with a sense of grace within it. In the end, though, the stargazer's always chosen me. Like, like every time, um, I it's one of my first memories of the art museum, and I feel like every time there's a certain magnetism to it, that it's iconic in the collection for a reason. Yeah. So what did
No, it
you
is really
notice, either in the body or about, what the stargazer is coming out of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. We already have some comments. I'd love to hear more comments, and then there are some questions I do want to we'll address in a moment that are more facts oriented. But when I was adopting that pose, I felt like I was like I was like, is this what if I was a superhero that could fly? Was this what I would feel like? And I felt like there was this propulsion upward,
Mm,
you know, and my eye ended up in the sky. Natural, I shouldn't say naturally, but I had in front of a window, and I started noticing birds that were flying very far away. They were sort of capturing the sunlight. So it was really like I was transported into the sky, right? Which I
mm.
thought was really meaningful in a way. Um, and it looks like those of you, what did you feel when you embodied that pose? It looks like Melissa says it feels like Tadasana, which is the mountain pose from yoga.
Yeah.
I don't know yoga. I'm not sure if that's has what meaning that has, or um, could you? It actually has many. Larry says it actually has many features one may find in a Japanese anime character, which I would not. I do not. I agree. There's this maybe the. People have also talked about how futuristic and modern this sort of figure feels as well because of the simplified forms, and it does have that sort of contemporary feeling stylistically for sure. Did
Mm.
you resonate? Did that Tadasana mountain pose resonate with you, Gwen?
Yeah, Tadasana is all about kind of that strength of planting. I've also thought of it kind of as like a taproot, that there's strength in that upright posture. There's something still stabilizing beneath us that we can't see. But I definitely feel that, Melissa. And I
Yeah.
do see all of these really wonderful questions coming up about the facts, right? People want to know what this is made out of and what the history of a piece like this is. Is that something you're ready to dive into, Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think we've sort of like embodied and sort of looked and embodied. So, and these are the things that kind of can help confirm some things that we're feeling, right? Which I think is really important. Um, Larry and Stacy were asking about what it's made of. Whether Larry said is it bone or is it stone? It's made of stone. It's a marble object. So and this is a common material for works of this time and also region. It's called the Stargazer, and the Stargazer is like a popular name given to it, I think, because of this pose that we all embodied. So it really made sense to me even more actually doing that. But if you talk to an archaeologist or an historian of ancient art, they'll call it a Kilia type figure, and that's spelled Kilia. And that's really just named after the region in northwest Turkey where it was found. And there are very few objects that are like this that are from that region that are still extant, so still around, maybe 30, right? We don't know how many were made because maybe they're still there and they just haven't been unearthed yet. And this object in particular is about 6 inches tall, 3 inches wide, so you can hold it in your hand. And it is really similar in style to figures from the Cycladic Islands, which are these islands in the Aegean that are also dated to around the same time. Those are also from around 3000 BCE, or that culture started making them then. But what makes this Stargazer and the Kilia type figures really unique, and if we could zoom in on it, Sean, is the arms. The way the arms are kind of carved out a little bit. There's like a space between the arm and the body. That's a really sort of unique aspect of it. The culture that produced this is pre-linguistic, or at least there's no evidence of a written language, which means that we don't know about its exact meaning or function. The archaeological record, right, doesn't tell us that much because there's not enough information to tell us where it was found, whether it was found in a ritual space or a burial space. So there's a lot that's really, kind of unknown. And it looks like we have some other. Does that kind of help flesh out some things in some ways, Gwen?
Yeah, I think that hearing a little bit of the history after taking the time to kind of do some of these slow looking and spend some mindful moments with her is really kind of ties it all together in that really loose and open way, right? It also kind of proves that
Yeah,
we still don't know a lot and that
totally.
can be beautiful. Yeah.
Exactly. It can be really beautiful. And actually, Larry's question of why is it being called a woman? Am I not seeing something? I think is a really good point, Larry. So maybe we could actually zoom in to the sort of lower half of the figure's body. And you can see that there's incisions that indicate a waist and a sort of a pubic area and the division of the legs. We don't see any genitalia, but you're very right, Larry, to say that just because we don't have presence of genitalia, we shouldn't ascribe gender to this figure, and historically has been ascribed. So I think that's a really great point. Like, there's no penis, so okay, so it's not male, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily female figure. So I think that's a great. I think it's a really interesting point to make about it. So besides the sort of, oh yeah, go ahead, Gwen, please.
I was going to say shifting the expectation of one more thing that we think we know about it. I've always been really tempted to call it a she, but you're right. I mean, there's no reason to assign it gender, and it feels very, very agender in how open and simple it is that it could embody so many different ways of being.
Yeah, no, I agree. Um, the CMA, I know, acquired it. Joanne, I think it's in the accession date. I think it was 1991. If one of my colleagues can confirm. Jean K asked what tools would have been used to not only carve the main shape, the etching, and the fine detail of the face. I must admit that I don't exactly know the exact tools that were used to carve it. This is a sort of very early Bronze Age, so I guess there would have been some potential of use of metal tools. But one thing that you can do with marble is really, it's hard, but it's also carvable. Obviously, it's not as dense as other stones in that way, and you can also polish it so it can get really smooth. Thank you. It was acquired in 1993, so that gives us a better sense of it in that way. I know there are tons more questions we could answer, but these are all great questions, right? That we can follow up on. But I wanted to make sure that we have enough time to close with the practice. But maybe Gwen, before we do that, as a mindfulness and contemplation guide, what can we learn from this sort of slow down looking at, close looking at the Stargazer?
Hmm. I mean, when we talk about slow looking, we're really talking about paying attention. And there is such an immense depth to seemingly simple things. And there's so much richness in the unknown. I think we often want answers, something that can be concrete and unchanging, but the mysteries of the universe are obviously so much older than we are and so much bigger than we are. And we have to, again, keep that seed of curiosity because that's what's going to help keep us available to be flexible and to be adaptable to change. Um, and if we allow it to, I think the stargazer kind of becomes an emblem of that, that questions often bore more questions than answers. And when we spend time slow looking or really taking something in, and in this case, the statuette, there's a way that we can kind of embody this piece of artwork within us. I've seen pieces that I can recall months or years later, and that they've kind of taken up residence, have this home within me, and can provide that comfort and that reminder. And I think that we'll all kind of need this reminder occasionally. And there it will be. And there it will be. Yeah.
No, I think that's really, and I see so many comments, and I don't want to, but are really thinking about, I think, what it's like to sort of experience this object and the hands that made it, what they maybe have used to make it. And you know, I think those are other ways of thinking about embodiment as well, which I think is quite interesting, right? And I love how we're maybe getting there through this. Um, yeah, as Larry said, so many approaches to meditate on this object.
Yeah. Yeah, and so many different ways to meditate. Is there anything else that you want to share or kind of go over before I get us into our closing practice?
No, I think we need to move. I think we're in the right time for that. So please, Gwen.
All right. So now that we're here and how quickly that went, we're going to kind of settle back into a practice. And I invite you once again to shift and settle and stretch and kind of explore all of those ways that you can make your own body a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more receptive. It's hard to listen when we're preoccupied by things that we can change. So allow yourself to find some comfort. Comfort is not always available to us, but where we can claim it, we should. And maybe one or two breaths all the way to the top of the inhale, and you might release it out of the mouth if that's comfortable for you. And each time you exhale, see if you can draw some awareness to like the weight of your body, and that you could trust whatever is underneath of you to support you in this moment. That your chair is built to hold you, it can support your weight. You can think about the ground and the ground below that. And if you're still staring at the screen, I invite you to close your eyes or to cast your gaze away. And without looking, see if you can begin to recall some of the contours of the stargazer. And it's not about being right or wrong. None of this is about being right or wrong. But see if you can begin to visualize the contours of the stargazer, and you might imagine its texture and its weight. It has survived millennia with that long neck intact. And you might tilt your own chin up and down. You might imagine yourself as a plant, like how plants move and shift and look for light. And if it's sunny where you are, you might even turn yourself towards it. Just notice yourself breathing and your heart beating. Notice where the body might tense, where it might be rigid, where it wants to hold everything together. And for this practice, for the next couple of moments, maybe we can set it aside that life will still be there when we're through, that we can pick back up all of the pieces that need us to attend to them. But for now, this being here can be enough. Nothing to do and no one to be, nothing to solve or fix, nothing to anticipate. Trace your breath all the way up to the top of the inhale and all the way down to the bottom of the exhale. And as much of your attention and your awareness that you can settle onto the breath, allow it to stay there or to return there. If the whole practice is just returning again and again and again, that will be enough. Even with the eyes closed, notice how the eyes are still looking just onto the back of your eyelids, but those eyes are still seeing. And for the next couple of breaths, imagine that you could cast your gaze out over the tip of the nose. The eyes might still be closed, but just feeling what it is like to look down and close. And then see if within your own body you can begin to adapt or adopt the position of the stargazer again. Just what you can remember of that felt sense, the broadness to the chest, the collarbones, the shoulders. Are the arms relaxed or tense? Are the shoulders high or low? What does the back of your neck feel like? And what strength is asked of you to hold yourself here? What grace can you find within it? With the eyes maybe still closed, imagine that you could look out far in the distance, how your focus, your perspective might change, how the feeling in your body might change. We'll give ourselves maybe just 5 more breaths here, and your posture can soften or return to whatever is comfortable for you to take them. As you're done, you can begin to softly open your gaze and take a moment to take in the room around you, to notice again where you are. And that we're back here together again. Thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Thank you, Gwen. I'm still arising out of that was really, wonderful. Thank you so much. There's a couple of questions about your lovely little reproduction of the Stargazer, which we don't have at the CMA store, but is really, I think, speaks to Gwen's devotion to this object. And yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is that, not of course, but I love the way we're kind of thinking about this very planted, grounded position, but the sculpture from how it's made can't actually stand on its own. And so how we see it in the museum, I don't know if Sean, if we have an image of that again, it's sort of propped up, and how all of the sort of images really show it sort of upright, or we read it as upright maybe, we can't say how it was positioned, but it wouldn't stand up on its own, right?
We all need some support.
That is a really beautiful way to think about it. So, well, we should. We all need some support, and Gwen, I could say thank you for giving us some mechanisms for that support, and also for supporting us this last 40 minutes or so. We really appreciate it.
A true pleasure.
And thank you. And I want to thank all of you out there for joining us this afternoon. I don't want to speak for everyone, for all of you out there, but feel free to put your experience in the comments. I felt it was much needed, just even over what's been happening the last few days. And I also wanted to, while we're here, to draw your attention to a couple of other programs that are upcoming that might interest you. On Monday, January 18th at 6 p.m., we're going to have our annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day program, but it'll be virtual. It features opening remarks by Reverend Dr. Jawanza Colvin and original poems recited by Cuyahoga County Poet Laureate Honeybell Bay and acclaimed poet Orlando Watson, and in conversation with my colleague Deirdre McPherson. So it should be a really exciting program. Tune in Monday, January 18th at 6 p.m. And then also our next desktop dialogue is going to be on February 3rd, Wednesday, February 3rd at noon. It's titled The Politics of Sound, and we're going to be joined by Nwaka Onwusa, who's the Vice President of Curatorial Affairs and the Chief Curator of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And together we're going to discuss some key objects and artists on view in the Rock Hall exhibition. It's been said all along, Voices of Rage, Hope, and Empowerment. And we're going to look at some of those objects alongside some works in the CMA collection and get Nwaka's really wonderful insight on them. So please join us for those programs. More information is on cma.org. If you'd like to explore more of our work in our collection, just visit CMA Collection online. And if we didn't get to your question during the program, or if you have more, you can always go to Artland's Ask on the CMA website and someone will get back to you with an answer. Links for everything are below. And thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Good afternoon.